The breaking point. The weight of centuries. The Galactic Commerce Federation headquarters floated in the void between star systems, a massive station built from the contributions of 300 species. Inside its central assembly hall, Ambassador Marcus Chen stood at the human podium for what felt like the 1,000th time in his career. He was 62 years old, with silver streaking through his black hair and deep lines carved around his eyes from decades of forced smiles. Behind him, the Earth's banner hung quietly, a simple blue and green sphere that represented humanity's place in the grand tapestry of galactic civilization. Marcus had served as humanity's chief diplomat for 35 years. His father had held the position before him and his grandmother before that. 3 generations of the Chen family had dedicated their lives to the same mission, keeping humanity safe through words instead of weapons. For 250 years, ever since humans had developed faster-than-light travel and stumbled into the greater galactic community, Earth had chosen the path of peace. They had seen what violence could do. Earth's history was written in the ashes of wars that nearly destroyed everything. Nuclear fire, biological plagues, conflicts that killed billions before humanity finally learned its lesson. When they reached the stars, they promised themselves they would be different. They would be better. The assembly hall buzzed with conversation in 100 different languages, translated through devices that turned alien sounds into comprehensible speech. Marcus watched the various species in their designated sections. The Veltherin resembled massive crystalline structures that pulsed with inner light. The Korthaxi were insectoid beings with 6 limbs and compound eyes that saw in spectrums humans could barely imagine. The Droon were aquatic creatures that floated in sealed tanks filled with ammonia-based liquid. Each species was unique, each civilization ancient by human standards, and most of them looked down on humanity with barely concealed contempt. Marcus cleared his throat and began his presentation. He was requesting the Federation intervene in a trade dispute between human colonies and the Zaxxon Collective. The Zaxxons were a reptilian species known for their aggressive business practices and territorial expansion. For the past 5 years, they had been systematically violating trade agreements, blocking human shipping routes, and demanding ever-increasing fees for passage through space they did not legally control. Human merchants had filed hundreds of complaints. Each time the Federation had promised to investigate, each time nothing happened. Today, Marcus brought new evidence. He displayed holographic records showing Zaxxon warships threatening unarmed human cargo vessels. He showed documentation of illegal tariffs and confiscated goods. He presented testimony from dozens of human captains who had been harassed, threatened, and in some cases beaten by Zaxxon enforcers. The evidence was overwhelming and undeniable. When Marcus finished his presentation, he waited for the Federation's response. The chamber fell silent. Then the Zaxxon representative stood. His name was Craxus, a hulking figure covered in dark green scales with eyes like yellow stones. He laughed, a harsh, barking sound that echoed through the hall. He said humans were complaining because they were too weak to defend their own interests. He said if humans wanted respect, they should stop whining and start fighting. Other species joined in the laughter. The Veltherin representative made a comment about humans being useful for paperwork, but little else. The Korthaxi ambassador suggested humanity should accept their natural place in the galactic hierarchy, servants and mediators, not equals. Marcus stood perfectly still. His face remained calm, his voice steady. He thanked the assembly for their time and sat down. Inside his chest, something cold and hard settled into place. He had felt it before, many times over the years. Each insult, each dismissal, each moment of contempt added another layer to that cold weight. He pushed it down the way he always did and smiled politely as the session ended. The incident. Meridian Station orbited a resource-rich moon in the outer colonies. It was a civilian hub where human families lived and worked, processing minerals and manufacturing components for trade throughout the sector. The station housed 8,000 people, miners, engineers, teachers, doctors, and their families. Children attended school in the station's educational wing. Couples ran small businesses in the commercial district. Elderly residents tended gardens in the agricultural domes, growing food for the community. On the morning of the incident, a human transport ship called the New Dawn approached Meridian Station. The vessel carried 892 passengers, mostly civilians returning home from visits to other colonies. There were families with young children, students coming back from university, workers finishing their contracts. The ship's captain, Elena Vasquez, had made this journey hundreds of times. She knew the route perfectly and followed every safety protocol. When the New Dawn was 30 minutes from docking, 3 Zaxxon warships appeared from the edge of sensor range. They moved to intercept the human transport. Captain Vasquez immediately opened communication channels. She identified her vessel as civilian and requested the Zaxxon ships state their intentions. The Zaxxon commander responded by demanding inspection fees and cargo taxes. Vasquez explained that the New Dawn was a passenger transport with no cargo, but she would comply with any legal inspection procedures. The Zaxxon commander laughed. He said humans always found reasons to avoid paying their debts. He said the Zaxxon Collective had claimed this sector and all human vessels must pay tribute or face consequences. Vasquez remained calm. She explained that Federation law did not recognize Zaxxon authority in this region. She offered to submit the dispute to proper channels. She asked for safe passage to the nearby station where her passengers could disembark safely. The Zaxxon warships opened fire without warning. Energy weapons tore through the New Dawn's hull. The transport ship had minimal shielding, designed only to protect against space debris, not military-grade weapons. The first volley destroyed the engine section, killing everyone in engineering instantly. The second volley struck the passenger compartments. Sections of the ship decompressed. People were pulled into the void, their screams cut short by the vacuum of space. Captain Vasquez managed to send one final transmission before the bridge was destroyed. Her words were simple. "They're killing us. Someone, please help." The attack lasted 7 minutes. When it ended, the New Dawn was debris floating in space. 892 people were dead. Among them were 214 children under the age of 12. There were elderly couples who had been married for 50 years. There were young parents holding their babies. There were students with their whole lives ahead of them. All gone in 7 minutes, because the Zaxxon Collective wanted to prove a point. The Zaxxon commander broadcast his action across local communication networks. He said this was a lesson for humans who refused to show proper respect. He said his name was Vexthor, and he feared no consequences because humans never fought back. They only talked and negotiated and begged. The recording showed him laughing as the New Dawn exploded behind him. The Federation's response. Marcus Chen received the news while in his quarters at Federation headquarters. He had been preparing dinner when the message came through. He stood frozen, holding a kitchen knife, staring at the casualty list scrolling across his data screen. 892 names. He knew some of them. His colleague's daughter had been on that ship, returning from a research fellowship. His former assistant's parents were among the dead, visiting their son in the colonies.
Marcus set down the knife very carefully. His hands were shaking, but his face remained expressionless. He put on his formal diplomatic robes and walked to the Federation Emergency Council chamber. Other human representatives were already gathering. They all had the same look in their eyes: shock, grief, and something else. Something cold and ancient that humanity had tried very hard to bury. The emergency session began within hours. Marcus presented the evidence. He showed the communication logs proving the New Dawn was a civilian vessel. He played the recording of Captain Vasquez's final words. He displayed the casualty list, reading some of the names aloud. Children who would never grow up. Parents who would never see their families again. 892 murders committed in broad daylight, with the perpetrator proudly claiming responsibility.
Marcus demanded immediate action. He called for Vexthor's arrest and trial for mass murder. He requested Federation security forces escort the criminal to justice. He reminded the Council that this was not a gray area or a cultural misunderstanding. This was deliberate slaughter of innocent civilians, and Federation law was absolutely clear on such matters. The Council deliberated for 2 days. Species representatives argued back and forth. Some expressed sympathy for the human losses. Others suggested the situation was more complex than it appeared. The Zaxxon representative claimed Vexthor had acted within his authority to enforce Zaxxon territorial claims. Several species agreed that humans should have paid the requested fees to avoid conflict. On the 3rd day, the Federation announced its decision. They acknowledged that the incident was regrettable. They agreed that civilian casualties were unfortunate. However, given the ongoing territorial disputes and the lack of clear jurisdiction, they recommended forming a committee to study the matter. The committee would meet in 8 weeks to discuss appropriate responses. In the meantime, both sides should avoid further escalation. Marcus listened to the verdict without moving. When the Council finished speaking, he asked a single question. If murdering 892 civilians does not warrant immediate action, what crime would? The Council had no answer. The session ended. Representatives filed out, already discussing other matters. The human deaths were yesterday's news, barely worth remembering. The message. Marcus returned to his quarters. He dismissed his staff and locked the door. For the first time in 35 years of diplomatic service, he allowed his careful mask to crack. He sat at his desk and thought about his grandmother, who had held this position before him. She had told him stories about Earth's darkest days, when humanity nearly destroyed itself. She had made him promise to always choose peace, to always believe that reason could triumph over violence. He had kept that promise. For 35 years, he had swallowed insults and smiled through contempt. He had negotiated and compromised and believed that patience would eventually earn humanity the respect they deserved. He had been wrong. The galaxy did not respect patience. It saw patience as weakness. It saw humanity's choice not to fight as an inability to fight. 892 people were dead because Marcus had believed in peace. They died because humanity had spent 250 years proving they would never retaliate. They died because the galaxy had learned that humans could be attacked without consequences. Marcus opened a secure communication channel to Earth. The message was encrypted with codes that only a handful of people could access. It bypassed normal diplomatic channels and went directly to the Terran Defense Command, a military organization that most galactic species did not even know existed. The message contained 3 words. The same words Ambassador Day One Kim had sent centuries before, in a different crisis that humanity hoped would never be repeated. 3 words that meant everything had changed. 3 words that ended 250 years of carefully maintained peace. Marcus typed slowly, his fingers steady now. We are done.
He pressed send and sat back in his chair. In orbit around Earth, Mars, Luna, and 50 colony worlds, ancient machinery began to wake. Shipyards that had been building in secret for 2.5 centuries received activation codes. Weapon systems that humanity had sworn never to use powered up for the first time. Military personnel who had trained their entire lives for a war they hoped would never come received deployment orders. The galaxy wanted to know if humanity had teeth. They were about to find out. And they would learn a terrible truth that Earth's history had taught in blood and fire. The most dangerous beings in the universe are not those who love violence, but those who understand it completely and choose peace anyway. When that choice is taken away, when patience is mistaken for weakness one too many times, the consequences are absolute. Marcus Chen sat alone in his quarters and mourned for the galaxy. They had no idea what they had awakened. Humanity had not forgotten how to wage war. They had simply chosen not to. That choice had just ended, and the stars themselves would remember what came next.
The Reckoning. The Awakening. Fleet Admiral Sarah Okonkwo stood on the bridge of the TDS Unbreakable Will, watching Earth grow larger in the viewport. She was 54 years old, with close-cropped gray hair and eyes that had seen things most humans never would. She had spent her entire adult life preparing for this moment, training for a war she prayed would never happen. Her father had done the same, and his mother before him. The Okonkwo family had served in the Terran Defense Command for 4 generations, guardians of secrets that could reshape the galaxy. Behind her, the bridge crew worked in focused silence. These men and women were the best humanity had to offer. They had trained in facilities hidden deep beneath Earth's surface, in asteroid bases disguised as mining operations, in shipyards built in the dark spaces between stars where no sensors could detect them. Every person here had volunteered, knowing they might serve their entire career without ever seeing combat. They had accepted that burden willingly, because they understood what was at stake. The activation codes had arrived 6 hours ago. 3 words from Ambassador Chen that meant 250 years of preparation would finally be tested. Sarah had read the reports about Meridian Station. She had seen the casualty lists. She had watched the recording of Vex Thor laughing as he murdered 892 innocent people. She had watched the Federation do nothing. Now it was humanity's turn to respond. "Status report," Sarah said quietly. Her tactical officer, Commander James Park, looked up from his console. "All fleet elements responding to activation sequence. Earth defense grid is at full operational status. Mars contingent reports ready. Luna's shipyards have commenced final deployment protocols. Colonial defense forces are spinning up across all 73 settled worlds." Sarah nodded. "How many ships?" "Current count is 74,812 combat-ready vessels. That number will increase as reserve units complete their activation checks. Estimated final strength, 76,000 warships within 12 hours. The bridge fell silent. Even though they all knew the numbers, hearing them spoken aloud made the reality sink in. 76,000 warships, the largest fleet ever assembled by any single species in known galactic history, and the galaxy had no idea they existed. Sarah thought about her grandmother, who had served on the first secretly constructed warship after humanity joined the Federation. The old woman had told her stories about those early days when humanity realized the galaxy's true nature. They had arrived at the galactic community with open hands and peaceful intentions, only to discover that the universe respected only one thing: strength. Species that could not defend themselves were prey. Species that chose not to defend themselves were considered weak. Humanity had made a choice then. They would pursue peace, but they would never again be helpless. Every generation since had contributed to this moment.
Engineers designed weapons in hidden laboratories. Scientists developed technologies that pushed the boundaries of physics. Strategists studied every military conflict in galactic history, learning from others' mistakes. And shipbuilders constructed a fleet in the shadows, adding vessels year after year, creating an armada that existed in the dark places where no one thought to look. Communications, Sarah said. Prepare to broadcast on all galactic frequencies. It's time the Federation learned who they've been underestimating. The revelation. Across the galaxy, sensors began registering impossible readings. On the Veltheran homeworld, military analysts stared at their displays in disbelief. Energy signatures were appearing throughout human space, massive power sources that should not exist. On the Korthoxy command station, strategic computers flagged anomalies that made no logical sense. Ships were emerging from locations that scans had always shown as empty space or civilian facilities. In the Federation headquarters, emergency alarms began screaming. The main tactical display lit up with thousands of red icons, each one representing a warship. The number kept climbing. 5,000, 10,000, 20,000, 50,000. The system struggled to process the data, computers overwhelmed by the sheer scale of what they were detecting. The Zaxxon Collective's military command received the alerts with confusion, followed by dismissal. Humans did not have warships, not real ones. Their records showed a few hundred light patrol vessels, barely armed, suitable only for police work and rescue operations. These readings had to be sensor malfunctions or some kind of elaborate hoax. Then the broadcasts began. Fleet Admiral Sarah Okonkwo's face appeared on every communication channel simultaneously. She wore the uniform of the Terran Defense Command, a military organization that no one outside humanity knew existed. Behind her, the bridge of a massive warship was visible, officers working at stations that displayed weapon systems and tactical screens. Her voice was calm and clear, without anger or theatrics. She simply stated facts.
I am Fleet Admiral Sarah Okonkwo of the Terran Defense Command. For 250 years, humanity has pursued peace through diplomatic means. We believed that reason and cooperation would earn us the respect and protection promised by the Galactic Commerce Federation. We were wrong. She paused, letting that sink in. Across the galaxy, billions of beings watched and listened. 3 days ago, Zaxxon Collective forces under Commander Vexthor attacked and destroyed a civilian human transport vessel. 892 innocent people were murdered. The Federation was presented with clear evidence of this crime. They chose to do nothing. They recommended forming a committee that would meet in 8 weeks. 8 weeks while the murderer goes free. 8 weeks while human civilians remain unprotected. 8 weeks of words without action. Sarah's expression did not change, but something in her eyes grew colder. Humanity will no longer wait for the Federation to enforce laws it claims to uphold. We will no longer trust others to protect our people. From this moment forward, we defend ourselves. The tactical display behind her zoomed out, showing the full scope of human military capability. 76,000 warships in formation, each one larger and more advanced than anything the galaxy had seen. Weapon systems that made current military technology look primitive. Defensive capabilities that seemed impossible. This was not a fleet cobbled together in desperation. This was the result of 2.5 centuries of focused preparation. Some of you are wondering where these ships came from. The answer is simple. We built them. Every year, every decade, every generation, we built ships and trained crews and developed technologies. We did this in secret because we knew the galaxy would not allow a peaceful species to possess such capability.
We did this in silence because we hoped we would never need to use it." She leaned forward slightly. "We have been building while you were laughing. We have been preparing while you called us weak. We chose patience and diplomacy, and you mistook that choice for inability. You were wrong. Humanity has never forgotten how to fight. We simply chose not to. That choice required more strength than violence ever could. But you killed 892 of our people, and the Federation did nothing. So now you will learn what happens when humanity stops choosing peace." The Hunt. The Zaxxon homeworld of Kraxar was a harsh planet of red deserts and jagged mountains. The collective government sat in a fortress city built from black stone, designed to withstand any attack. The Zaxxon military had never been defeated in their 4,000-year history. They were warriors who believed strength was the only measure of worth, and they had grown arrogant from centuries of easy victories. When reports reached Kraxar about human fleet movements, the Zaxxon High Command laughed. Humans did not have military capability. This was obviously some desperate bluff, a pathetic attempt to seem threatening. They ordered their fleets to maintain current positions and ignored the warnings. Commander Vexthor was celebrated as a hero. He had struck a blow against the weak humans and faced no consequences. He attended victory ceremonies and boasted about how easily humans died. He said their screams had been amusing, that watching the new dawn explode had brought him satisfaction. The Zaxxon government gave him a medal and promoted him to a higher rank. 4 days after the Meridian Station massacre, human ships appeared in the Kraxar system. Not a small patrol, not a diplomatic escort, but a battle fleet of 500 warships led by the dreadnought Unbreakable Will. The Zaxxon defense fleet scrambled to respond. 240 warships took defensive positions around their home world, weapons armed and shields at maximum. The Zaxxon fleet commander opened communications, intending to mock the humans one final time. He never got the chance. Fleet Admiral Okonkwo broadcast a single message. "Commander Vexthor is under arrest for the murder of 892 civilians. Surrender him immediately or face the consequences. You have 1 hour." The Zaxxon commander laughed and closed the channel. His fleet outnumbered the humans 2-to-1 in this system, and the entire Zaxxon military could be here within days. He ordered his ships to attack positions, confident this would be a quick and entertaining victory. 59 minutes later, Sarah gave the order.
What happened next lasted exactly 8 minutes. Human warships moved with precision that seemed impossible for vessels their size. They did not fire conventional weapons. Instead, they deployed technology the galaxy had never encountered. Electromagnetic pulse weapons that shut down Zaxxon ships without destroying them. Gravitational manipulation systems that pulled vessels out of formation. Energy dampening fields that made shields useless. Nanite swarms that disabled weapon systems at the molecular level. The Zaxxon fleet tried to fight back. They launched missiles that never reached their targets. They fired energy beams that harmlessly dispersed against defensive screens. They attempted boarding actions that failed when human point defense systems vaporized the assault craft. Nothing worked. Every tactic they tried had been anticipated. Every weapon they used had a counter. One by one, 240 Zaxxon warships went dark. Not destroyed, not burning, just disabled. Dead in space with their crews trapped inside, life support functioning, but everything else offline. The humans could have killed everyone. They chose not to. They demonstrated that they possessed overwhelming power, but used it with surgical precision. Sarah's voice came over the communication channels again. "We could have destroyed your fleet and bombarded your world. We chose mercy, not because we are weak, but because unnecessary death serves no purpose. Commander Vexthor will be taken into custody. He will face trial for his crimes. Anyone who interferes will be treated as an accomplice to murder." Human boarding teams transported onto Vexthor's flagship. The Zaxxon commander tried to resist, but his weapons had been disabled along with everything else. He was arrested without ceremony and brought aboard the Unbreakable Will. The entire operation took less than 10 minutes. Then the human fleet withdrew, leaving the disabled Zaxxon vessels drifting in orbit. Their systems would reactivate in 24 hours, enough time for humanity to be long gone, but not so long that anyone would die from life support failure. The message was clear. Humanity could have inflicted total destruction. They chose restraint. But that restraint should never be mistaken for weakness. The trial. The trial of Commander Vextor was broadcast across the entire galaxy. It took place on a human space station specifically constructed for this purpose, a neutral location where every species could observe the proceedings. The chamber was designed to accommodate representatives from all Federation species, with viewing galleries and translation systems that ensured everyone could follow what happened. Vextor was brought before the court in restraints. He was given a defense attorney, a human lawyer named Chen Wei, who had decades of experience in criminal law. Despite Vextor's crimes, he was afforded every right and protection under human legal codes. He was allowed to present any evidence in his defense. He could call witnesses and challenge the prosecution's case. The trial would follow every rule of justice that humanity had developed over centuries. The prosecutor was a woman named Aisha Muhammad, the Chief Justice of the Terran Legal Corps. She presented the evidence methodically and without emotion. Communication logs showing the New Dawn was a civilian vessel, Captain Vasquez's final transmission, the casualty list with the names and ages of all 892 victims, Vextor's own recording where he bragged about the attack and laughed at human weakness. The evidence was overwhelming. Vextor's defense attorney did his best, arguing that his client had acted according to Zaxxon cultural norms and military protocols, but even Chen Wei acknowledged privately that the facts were undeniable. Vextor had killed hundreds of unarmed civilians deliberately and without provocation. The trial lasted 6 days. Representatives from every major species attended. They watched as human justice operated with careful precision. No torture, no coerced confessions, no secret proceedings. Everything was open and transparent. Vextor was treated with dignity, even though he deserved none. This was humanity showing the galaxy what justice looked like. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on 892 counts of murder. The sentence was life imprisonment without possibility of parole. Vextor would spend the rest of his life in a human detention facility where he would be kept safe and healthy, but would never again be free.
When the sentence was read, Vextor finally showed something other than arrogance. He looked confused. He had expected humans to execute him or torture him or kill him slowly as revenge, but they simply locked him away. His defense attorney explained that humans did not believe in revenge. They believed in justice. There was a difference. The new order. In the Federation headquarters, an emergency session convened. Every species representative attended. The chamber buzzed with frightened conversations. The military balance of power had shifted dramatically overnight. Humanity possessed a fleet larger than the combined forces of the 10 most powerful Federation species. They had demonstrated technology that made current military capabilities obsolete, and they had proven they could project force anywhere in the galaxy within days. Some species demanded military action against humanity. They argued that this threat needed to be eliminated before humans became too powerful. But when military analysts ran simulations, the results were terrifying. A war with humanity would cost trillions of lives. Victory was not guaranteed. Even if they won, the galaxy would be devastated. Other representatives argued for accommodation. Humanity had not acted aggressively except in response to an undeniable crime. They had disabled the Zaxxon fleet without killing anyone. They had conducted a fair trial and imposed reasonable punishment. Perhaps humans could be reasoned with. Ambassador Marcus Chen entered the chamber wearing a Terran Defense Command uniform instead of diplomatic robes. He was accompanied by a dozen armed human soldiers, the first time any species had brought military personnel into the Federation's inner sanctum.
The sight sent a clear message. Humanity was no longer asking for permission. Marcus walked to the center of the chamber and placed a data crystal on the presentation platform. His voice was quiet, but carried clearly through the hall. For 250 years, humanity has invested in this federation. We believed in the principles it claimed to uphold. We trusted that laws would be enforced and members would be protected. 892 of our people died because that trust was misplaced. The Federation failed in its most basic duty. He activated the data crystal. Holographic displays showed the history of human diplomatic efforts. Hundreds of complaints filed and ignored. Dozens of treaty violations without consequences. Years of patience met with contempt. The evidence was damning. We are not interested in conquest or domination. We want what we have always wanted: peace, security, and justice. But we will no longer depend on others to provide these things. From this moment, humanity establishes the Terran Protection Compact. Any species that wishes to join will receive the full protection of human military forces. In exchange, they must commit to genuine peace and equal justice for all. Within a week, 17 species had signed treaties with humanity. These were not the powerful empires that dominated the Federation. They were smaller civilizations that had been bullied and exploited for centuries. The Menthari, whose peaceful society made them easy targets. The Kailani, who had lost colonies to aggressive neighbors. The Talvin Accord, a coalition of trading species that needed security. They all chose humanity because humans had proven something unprecedented. They possessed overwhelming power, but used it to protect rather than conquer. The Federation faced a choice. They could oppose humanity and risk war. They could maintain the status quo and become irrelevant as more species left for human protection. Or they could reform and prove they deserved to exist. Ambassador Marcus Chen delivered humanity's final ultimatum. The Federation would establish real enforcement mechanisms with human military support. Laws would be applied equally to all species without exception. Crimes against civilians would result in immediate action, not committees and delays. If the Federation agreed to these terms, humanity would participate. If not, humans would defend their interests and their allies independently. The vote took 3 days. In the end, the Federation agreed to every demand. They had no choice. The galaxy's power structure had fundamentally changed. Where once humanity begged for scraps of respect, now they dictated terms from a position of absolute strength. But Sarah Okonkwo, watching from the bridge of the unbreakable will, felt no triumph. She thought about the 892 people who died at Meridian Station. She thought about the price of this victory, paid in blood and innocence. Humanity had revealed its claws, and the galaxy would never forget. The question was whether future generations would remember why those claws had stayed hidden for so long. Peace was not the absence of weapons. Peace was having weapons and choosing not to use them. Humanity had made that choice for 250 years. When others forced their hand, the response was absolute. Now the galaxy would have to decide whether they wanted humanity as a guardian or an enemy. For the first time in galactic history, that choice would be honored. The stars burned on, indifferent to the affairs of those who traveled between them. But among the inhabited worlds, a new understanding spread. Humanity had finally lost its patience, and the galaxy would be shaped by what came next.